Hey everybody, I'm Sierra.
And I'm Ben.
And welcome back to another episode of The Unsolved Couple, where every week Ben and I recap one of the original gateway drugs into true crime.
Unsolved Mysteries.
Okay, babe, before we get started, I want to share with you one of my favorite new podcasts.
Welcome to Primetime Crime Podcast. I am your host, Kylie, and in this podcast, we are going to deep dive into some lesser known unsolved true crime cases, from missing persons to unsolved homicides. This is the place where we are going to unpack it all, research it all, talk about it all, and try to bring justice to these families after all of these years. We are going to take it one story at a time, one case at a time, and hopefully justice will be ours.
Yeah, so please everybody go check out Kylie's podcast, follow her on all social medias. And Ben, what are we recapping this week?
Season 2, episode
9. Yep.
We're in it.
How was your week, love?
My week was great. I'm really excited. Baseball is officially back.
Yeah, I've lost my husband for the next 128 games or whatever.
162 games,
162, 7 months. Ben is no longer with us, guys. Sorry.
I'm still here, but it was opening weekend. It was great. We watched opening day together as a family, and my Diamondbacks are looking good so far. I'm excited. I love it.
Good.
How was your weekend? How was your week?
PSA, I got glasses.
Yeah, you did.
And it's been a lot.
This is so sorry. I just kicked the table. I apologize. You've never worn glasses.
One, first, I had never had an eye exam in my life.
You've never had an eye exam.
Mm-mm. It was my first one. I did a little reel about being stressed about it, but I mean, cut to the chase. I have stigmatism. I didn't realize until I think I was like in my early 30s that not everybody saw like beams of light around lights, and whoever came up with the LED headlights is Satan.
Satan. All right.
But that's my biggest concern, is that as I've gotten older, that has actually gotten worse. And we in Arizona don't have time change, so it just is always dark here by like 8 o'clock no matter what. So I'm driving a lot at night.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Anyways, long story short, the lenses that I have are really weird in the fact that the biggest thing I'm trying to correct is my astigmatism, trying to make it better, which means I'm trying to trick my eyes and my brain into seeing something differently. And I've basically been a drunk cruise ship person for the last 24 hours. You know, the person stumbling around on the cruise ship. I've dropped things. Everything is off a little bit.
Perceptions.
Yeah, and so the doctor told me it's going to take 3 to 4 days of wearing these nonstop to get used to it. And the problem is, I don't really need them when I'm just at home during the day, but point is I have to wear them.
Yeah, you do.
I don't know. That's how my week was. Getting old is fun, and whoever made LED lights into headlights is the worst. So.
Well, I don't think that's what caused your stigmatism. I think, that's.
And I guess I just always thought I could get it fixed with LASIK, but since I still have 20/20 vision, they won't take the risk of fixing my astigmatism. Because anyways. So. It's fine.
So you're a new glasses wearer.
And right. If anyone sees me in town and thinks that I'm intoxicated, I am not. I'm just trying to learn how to wear my glasses. All right, so I'm going to get us started today with a story about a girl, Maria Armstrong. Now, I'm going to be honest. I have to tell this obviously how Unsolved Mystery tells the story. When I was doing my research, I wanted to tell it a little bit more from the victim's point of view, but it was hard because Unsolved Mysteries didn't really give us that. The story is about Maria, who is actually not the victim in the story.
She's the wanted
She's
person.
The perpetrator. Yeah, and so I guess she's wanted. But anyways, here we go. So Maria Armstrong grew up in South New Jersey. She was known as a sweet-tempered, kind, and very attractive girl. One of the guys she dated in high school was named Ron Argenta. That's likely very incorrect, but we're going with it.
You're rolling with it.
He graduated with honors at 17 and joined the National Guard. It seemed even after leaving his hometown, he still thought about his high school girlfriend, Maria. That's from a musical, Maria.
Shocking.
Do you still think about your high school girlfriend?
No, not. There's never been a day in my life I've thought about that, ever.
I just think, here's the thing. Everyone had a high school sweetheart of some sort, but she stuck around in his mind.
Yeah, but he was single.
Yeah, and he had every right to think about her.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a single guy.
The man is single. He's allowed to think of the girls that he dated prior.
Yeah.
You know?
In 1984, he moves to Mesa, Arizona, and begins working at the McDonnell Douglas. Working for, not at the. He worked for McDonnell Douglas.
Not McDonald's.
Not McDonald's. Is McDonnell Douglas an Air Force base?
I have no idea.
I don't know,
what
but
that
I
is.
think it has something to do with airplanes.
Okay. Didn't they say was it aviation? Like they made planes or they did
Could
something?
be. Could have been.
Could have been.
At the same time, Maria was still living in New Jersey and started having some struggles. We're kind of getting like the flip-flop story here, back and forth between his kind of these his early 20s and her early 20s, right around high school graduation time. She started slipping in and out of worlds of delusion and paranoia. At first, her parents feared that she was using drugs and actually had her committed to state mental hospital. However, doctors soon diagnosed her as having paranoid schizophrenia.
Oh, that's terrible.
Terrible, right? So I did a little bit of research just at the surface of this. People with paranoid schizophrenia have almost no ability to distinguish between reality and non-reality. And a lot of the times, unfortunately, the things that they are experiencing in their mind, they believe are real, but also very terrifying. Yeah. So and the thing that is crazy about schizophrenia is it's not as common in girls as it is in men, but doesn't start showing symptoms until about 19 to 23 years old. So you can live a relatively normal, successful life and then be hit with this.
I know. I've heard that before, and that is terrifying.
Terrifying, yeah.
Especially for you and your family, right?
But your whole sense of reality is now.
But your family has raised you, and for 18, 19 years, you're just normal.
And for a lot of us, that's the first time you're on your own.
Yeah. And then you go off the deep end, and your family's probably just trying to figure out what is going on. And obviously, probably the first thing people are thinking is, what did you do to yourself to change this, right? Because you were normal, and clearly you've done something. You're taking something that, I mean, so I would imagine that most people would jump to the conclusion they're doing drugs.
Yeah, and I've had a few experiences where I think that I've seen things, and I'm able to rationalize in my mind that they're not real, or they're not there, or you blink your eyes or whatever, and it's gone. I cannot imagine the perpetuating fear of thinking that you're seeing some shadow or demon or something, whatever your deep-rooted, most terrifying inner thoughts are, happening in front of you or playing out, and and no one else can see it.
Just goes to show the mind is it's crazy what it's capable of doing, and how little we know about it.
Yeah. So, in hindsight, and this is obviously 2020, unfortunately, right as she's being diagnosed with this, her and Ron start to communicate again. And he convinces her to move to Arizona to live with him. We will find out later she was using drugs, which is not uncommon with people with mental health issues, because they seem to try to self-medicate. And so you've got someone with early diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, also using drugs, and he, I think, trying to be a good friend or good boyfriend, was like, if I can get her out of that town, maybe get her some better medical care here, get her away from the small town drugs, X, Y, or Z, we might be able to get on the other side of this. And in June of 1988, Maria agrees and moves in with Ron in Mesa. He had hoped that he could help her get on the other side of these. However, his family, who's interviewed in this episode, expresses their major concerns for their safety since she had been institutionalized a handful of times. For the first few weeks, however, things seemed to actually be adjusting in a good direction. Then there was a switch. Ron started having to work the graveyard shift. This caused Maria's paranoia to flare up immensely. Being home alone at night in a place that she did not know anyone.
I think if it wasn't that it would have been something else eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, and she was, because she also didn't know anyone, she was also left home alone for long hours at a time, which is not going to help anyone with any mental health issues. Also, a neighbor in the apartment complex began supplying her with drugs. I looked, I could not find what kind of drugs were being supplied. I don't know if she was smoking weed or if she was doing something hallucinogenic, which I cannot imagine mixing that with
I don't
paranoid
think that's
schizophrenia, or even anything like a methamphetamine that's going to get somebody amped up. It's not a good combination.
No.
So she starts accusing Ron of plotting against her and, just all of the normal sort of problems.
The paranoid.
Mm-hmm. And in turn, she starts to physically attack him. I would like to point out that men can be victims of domestic violence as well. I think there's a stigmatism around them. And I don't know what it would be like to be a man in a situation where you've got a much smaller woman physically attacking you. Where's the line between restraining and protecting yourself and crossing a line?
I don't know, but I just feel bad. Like this guy, I mean, obviously he cared about her. Mm-hmm. He's thought about it. Now he's done a lot just trying to help her. Also
still both very young.
Yeah.
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 So his family hears about her struggles and tries to convince him to take her to the mental hospital. And he defends her for a little while. And I cannot imagine that those places were something she was really had good memories of and wanted to go back to. So I imagine this is someone you love and care about. The last thing you want to do, this is a terrible situation all around. So finally, though, November 8th, 1988, Ron has reached a breaking point. He tells his sister, who's interviewed on this, about this conversation, that he had to be done. He was going to have her go back to New Jersey. They were actually getting complaints and being threatened to be kicked out of the apartment complex. I think it was starting to affect his work. It's affecting his mental health. He's being assaulted by her.
It's affecting his living situation.
Yeah, he is over. He's over the situation, and he is well into deep water with this.
He's probably realized I can't do anything. I can't help here. Like this is it. I'm in over my head.
I'm in over my head. And so the sister says, like, she knew that Maria was there and was in the background, at least in the reenactment, was like giggling and like talking to people that weren't really there. And it just seemed like it was that was the day he was done. So they end their phone call and hang up. The next day, Maria gets up and drives into a Navajo reservation called Bitter Springs. She takes Ron's car in and tries to sell it. She also started going by the name Sandy. She reaches out to some residents if they knew anyone that would paint the truck for her. They all notice that she's behaving strangely, she's talking to herself, walks into several homes uninvited, asks one woman to dye her hair blonde, and is kind of just terrorizing this town, this little Indian reservation, right? Have we driven through this area?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's off 89.
Okay, because they said in the Unsolved Mysteries that this Bitter Springs area is not like one big area, but instead it's like these little tiny sub-communities spread throughout a bigger Navajo area. And I was like, we drove through a reservation like that was not...
It's just south of Page.
Okay.
So we've driven.
It's beautiful. Is that the road that goes bumpy, bumpy? Yeah, that's the road.
We actually talked about it on the...
Yeah, that's the road that I like to drive very fast on.
Yeah. That's
it's so fun.
I caught Sierra going 90 on. I look over and she's going 90. But yeah, it's off 89
okay.
there.
That's what I thought when they were talking. It seemed familiar to me. So she's terrorizing this little tiny neighborhood, and it seems like, again, these are small. There's probably only a couple hundred people living in this little area, and she's walking into people's houses. Finally, the next day, one of the residents calls the Arizona Highway Patrol to their house because she had left a car there, and the residents were starting to believe that this car was stolen and that something was off. So the officer shows up, and he finds her hiding in a stranger's house and starts to question her, but he has nothing to hold her on. I mean, I guess trespassing, breaking and entering, but...
Yeah, but...
Yeah,
he's on the Indian reservation.
That's true. When you are dealing... Because they called Highway Patrol because they believe the vehicle was stolen, but I am assuming that there's...
I don't know.
There's law enforcement for reservations, and they have their own police. So, yeah, anyways, long story short, he specifically did not have anything to hold her on as a Highway Patrol officer. He did feel uncomfortable letting her go, but he has no choice. But he confiscates the vehicle, because it's not hers, and she says that her boyfriend just let her have it. He's got no way to prove or disprove that that's not correct. So she just wanders off into the sunset. They literally show like a girl walking on an old highway with like the Arizona sunset in the background. 4 days later, November 14th, a maintenance man at Ron's apartment noticed a stack of newspapers in front of the door. He and the manager go inside and find his deceased body hidden underneath several blankets and pillows. He had been bludgeoned to death. A sledgehammer was found next to him.
Golly.
I know. An autopsy revealed that he had been stabbed once with a wooden-handled knife. However, they believe that was done potentially post-mortem. Authorities believe that he was sleeping on the couch when Maria came up and beat him to death with a sledgehammer, covered up his body, and took his car and fled.
Awful. Just terrible.
Yeah. She was last seen November 11th, 1988, hitchhiking 260 miles north of Mesa. Police are looking for her. And that's where Unsolved Mysteries leaves us.
Dun, dun, dun.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted for murder. All right.
Okay, you ready?
Update.
Captured. After this case was re-aired, a viewer contacted the FBI stating that Maria was living in Memphis, Tennessee. The viewer said that she was going to be at the airport August 11th, 1990. So whoever turned this girl in was like legit close with her. Enough
they clearly were an acquaintance.
Yeah. The FBI went to the location and arrested her, bless you, without incident. Bless you again.
Sorry.
During her time on the run, she had changed her appearance by dyeing her hair blonde. She had told authorities that she was planning to fly to New Jersey to actually be reunited with her family. 2 weeks after her arrest, Maria was returned to Arizona to face first-degree murder charges.
When was she arrested? Does it say? I might have missed it.
1990.
Oh, okay. So it was pretty within a year.
Yeah.
After something like that.
Thanks to Unsolved Mysteries. Wrapping these cases up left and right.
Let's not get too carried away here.
So, however, while waiting to determine if her mental state was safe enough or in a right place to even stand trial, she decided to plead guilty to second-degree murder, was sentenced to 15 years in prison, and was released in 2005 after 13 years. And that's it.
So
I tried to look her up today. I think I found her Twitter account. It's not very active. Unfortunately, the name Maria Armstrong on all other social medias
a pretty common
has
name.
Thousands of people. Yeah.
And usually they don't identify themselves as a
Hey,
convicted
I was
murderer.
on Unsolved Mysteries once.
And I did 15 years for a murder.
Yeah. So this is a complicated case for me in the fact that we have a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, but the legal standard of whether someone is competent to be held responsible for murder would typically, the biggest thing from, and I'm not a psychologist, is what they did afterwards. She fled the scene. She evaded police. She tried to disguise herself.
So she understood what she
there
had
you
done
go.
and that.
So maybe it was a contributing factor to what happened that night, but ultimately she was in a healthy enough mental state to know the difference between right and wrong because she fled and then spent time dyeing her hair and trying to do all of this stuff.
Yeah, but in the end, they caught her.
Yeah.
She was convicted. I mean, she was convicted of second-degree murder, or she pled guilty to it.
And second degree, I'm going to guess, does fit if this wasn't premeditated.
Yeah.
Yeah? I mean, isn't that the
I don't-
loose definition of first-degree murder is typically premeditated, second degree is you...
Crimes of passion and things like
yeah,
that.
in the moment, but you still took somebody's life
But you still
willingly with
knowingly
intent and
you
knew what you were doing. Yeah.
You know, and you intended to do that.
Yeah.
So, I still kind of think it's a little crazy. 15 years and that's it, and you're out. And this poor guy, all he was trying to do was help her. He wasn't.
Yeah.
He is a true victim,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And this girl did a bit, and then she's out and gets to live her. I don't know. You know, we could debate this all day.
It's complicated.
It sucks.
But
I'm glad they got her.
Yeah.
And
I hope that she has gotten help that she needs and that she's able to maybe do some good afterwards. I don't know. That's why I guess you hope. No, I don't know. It's complicated.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a podcast for another day.
Yeah.
This is Unsolved Mysteries and Captured. Okay. Am I up?
Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, I wrote down a few places that we have been downloaded at in the last week or so. Mount Joy, Pennsylvania. That sounds like a fun place. Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
Broken Arrow. That's a movie, I think.
Is it really?
Pretty sure. It's a movie.
The only thing I know about Oklahoma is that there is a guy in a cowboy hat there and a white shirt, and he loves to walk around when it's raining outside. Isn't that Twisters? Weren't they in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's that guy's name? That actor?
Glenn Powell.
Glenn Powell. Yeah.
Don't pretend you didn't know. You know exactly who that is.
But I do love that movie. It's so good.
That new Twisters was really good. All right, we're getting distracted.
Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah.
Yes. Ben and I want to go there so bad.
I want to go to Ireland.
All right,
so
Carmel, Indiana. I'm convinced that this is obviously Oprah Winfrey or one of the Indiana Colts people because only very high-end
Does
people.
Oprah Winfrey live there?
I feel like I heard at one time that she had a house in...
I
that
bet she
could
has-
just be completely made up.
Did you just make
Isn't
it
she
up?
from...
No, I think she's from Chicago.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of the same neck of the woods,
I think
isn't
that's
it?
where her show was.
Yeah.
In Chicago.
I don't know.
I don't
But
know.
Carmel, Indiana, from my understanding, because you lived in Indiana, but I've also heard that is like the legit top of the top that live there.
I have been to Carmel, Indiana. It's nice. It's a
I'm
nice
sure
part of
it is.
Indianapolis. It's all like the Indianapolis metro area.
Yeah. Okay. Stevens, Texas, Williamstown, New Jersey, and Cookeville, Tennessee.
You know I love Tennessee.
I know you do. And I think that's a tiny little town just outside of Nashville.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. You
All right. Are
may
you ready
proceed with our
this
story.
super sad story?
Okay. I cried.
Golly, this story, it will get you.
Yeah,
It
I cried.
will get
I
ya.
ugly cried when I watched this. And then I made Ben do the story because I'm like, if I tell it, we're not going to get through it.
Oh, my goodness. All right. This is a story about a boy in a concentration camp. So we're just going to tell you right off the top.
I've never even watched Boy in the Striped Pajama. Have you watched
No,
that? No, I cannot.
Listen, it's a part of history it's crazy and I like to know about, but it's extremely hard to study and to learn about because it's just
Terrible.
horrific. Anyways, we're going to talk about this boy was named Shmulik Rosenthal, but he actually now goes by the name Stephen Ross, he lives in Boston. Well, did. All right. In 1939, we know that the war was when World War II really broke out. Germany had invaded Poland, and Shmulik and his family lived there. They lived in a tiny little farm town, and as we know, Nazis are going around rounding up Jews and putting them in camps. So his parents tried to hide Shmulik. He was 8 years old at the time. They hid him with another family that was Catholic in hopes that he wouldn't get caught. And oh my gosh, they interview him at this point.
Yeah,
and
this man is interviewed.
he's telling this. He's the one telling us.
Yeah, he's the
that
one
this
telling
has
us the
happened.
story.
He said, I tried to be brave. I tried to emulate my father. He's like, I didn't cry. It's just awful.
Yeah, and he says that would be the last
It was
time.
the last time he ever saw his family again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, within a year, Shmulik is found and is put into a concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
He spends the next 5 years.
5 years, guys.
So at 9 years old, he went to a concentration camp and spent 5 years going to 10 different concentration camps all over. Most of them were in Poland.
Yeah.
And in Germany.
I guess I didn't realize the amount of Jewish people living in Poland. That seemed to be
A lot.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, in Unsolved Mysteries, they say like over half, because we know
I guess I didn't
6
realize
million.
I didn't realize the vast amount of that 6 million. How many of them came from Poland?
They said almost half of those came. And they said
Poland
1.5.
is not a big area.
But out of the 6 million, they say 1.5 million of them were children
Yeah,
that were killed.
didn't-
It is horrendous.
Yeah.
Horrendous. The last camp that he was at was Dachau, which was in Germany. And he tells us of the conditions in Dachau.
Yeah. This is when I started.
Said they would get like a little soup for lunch and dinner and a tiny slice of bread. They would dish out 1 pound of bread between like 20 people. He said obviously we know they did not have enough to sustain themselves. How he lasted.
People were starving to death there.
He said people were dying.
And they were working 15 hours a day.
Yeah, they said they worked all day. They had nothing. Then they would just sleep on boards, no blankets.
They literally showed the sleeping conditions, and it's like a chicken coop almost, like these stacks of boxes. And there's 2 to 3 people per basically a wooden slot that you sleep in. No blanket, no padding. They were covered in fleas and lice.
Yeah, he said he was infested with lice. He said it was hell. He goes, he literally was just surviving one
basically
day,
living day
not
to
knowing
day
if
if
he
he
would
was gonna-
live the next day. He goes, that's all you thought about was just surviving that day.
Yeah.
So at 14, in April 1945, the good guys come. America starts liberating the concentration camps. And Dachau was liberated by American soldiers. So they're tended to, obviously, like, I had read, like, American soldiers, they started coming up on these camps and having no idea.
I don't
what they
think
were
the world
coming
knew
into.
what was happening in these camps.
Yeah.
And I mean, the soldiers, these are 18 to 20-something-year-old men who had no training, medical training. Like, there was probably a language barrier. I cannot...
So obviously we are invading, so we're moving forward.
Yeah.
We're establishing our
control.
well, and like base camps and stuff. So they tell them, like, hey, there's a hospitalization this way. They kind of like tend to them and then say, head here, and they're going to be taken care of and help that. So he tells the story, Shmulik, that they're walking down the road. Him and his brother are walking down the road out of Dachau, and there's all these tanks lined up along the road. And he says there's this guy sitting there eating his food with his bayonet just out of it.
Out of a tin can, yeah.
Yeah. And this soldier jumps down and gives him his food that he was eating. And he said he gave it to his brother. And he said he fell down at the feet of this soldier.
Yeah, this little boy.
And started kissing his boots.
Yeah.
And, the way he talks about...
Well, what would you have, like, can you even imagine someone being so broken that that's what they do to you?
No.
No.
And he said the soldier held him, told him everything was going to be okay. And Shmulik's talking about it like, this man, he didn't care that I was infested with lice. He goes, I thought he said something really crazy. Is that he said he hadn't been shown kindness and pretty much
no affection
for so long in his life. So the thought of someone just
even this boy's very essence of who he was, his skin color, his faith, his genetic, everything was not only stripped from him, but was disgusting to these horrible men who had treated him the way that they had. So for someone to just give him a hug and tell him, you're safe, everyth's going to be okay, after 5 years.
5 years. And what's the word I'm looking for? Very prominent years of your life, from 9 to 14.
Yeah.
He's been treated
formative years of his life, yeah.
Nothing but terrible.
Yeah.
He said this man held him. He gave him what he thought was a handkerchief, but it turned out to be a flag.
Yeah, it was an American flag.
And he said this was the flag of freedom to him. Mm-hmm. And that he said to him it felt like this was a miracle from God. Yeah,
he gathers up some of the other rations that they have, gives it to them so that it can get them down the road where they need to get to this med camp.
This soldier then gathers rations, gives it to him, and just tells him everything's going to be okay, and gives him a hug. And he said just that kindness changed his life forever.
It's the smallest act of human kindness, just to make sure that somebody had a little food and a hug.
Yeah. He said at that point he was 60 pounds.
We have a son this age, and Yeah.
Anyways.
Sorry, guys. I get really emotional
Anyways, Shmulik ends up coming to the United States in 1948 and married.
And he lost everyone except his brother.
Yeah. He then learns, he says he learns when he comes out of the camp, him and his brother learn that he lost his mom and dad and his 6 other siblings.
Yeah.
to the concentration camps.
Yeah.
They all were killed in the concentration camps. So he was able to finally come to the United States in 1948. He changed his name to, I told you, Stephen Ross. And he becomes a licensed psychologist who goes around and helps
young teenagers.
Teenagers in the community in Boston.
In those formative years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how he spent his life. And so Schmulik...
And he carried that flag with him.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get into it. That little handkerchief flag, he said he cherished it for his whole life.
It was like one of his most prized possessions.
Yeah. So, but he wants to find this soldier. Mm-hmm. And then he gets into why. And this will get you to. He goes, this man taught him how to love because of that man. He said it was just so amazing to feel compassion from a soldier who was taught to kill, but yet this man still found kindness in his heart.
And he didn't turn this. And I thought that this was that this boy at that age recognized that he was covered in lice and likely smelled, and like all of the kind of those faux pas that we have, right? And the simple fact that this man could have been disgusted by that or even a little nervous and kept his distance, whatever, he didn't.
Yeah. And I thought what he said too was he goes, I want to know who this soldier is because he is a part of my life. He said, he is a part of my family.
Yeah.
Wow. All because you only had one tiny interaction.
It shows what kindness can do.
It shows what this
boy could have left this concentration camp with anger and hate and revenge, and rightfully so in his heart.
And one kind act.
Yeah.
Who it probably wasn't much from the soldier, but that tiny act changed the course of a generation.
Yeah.
Technically, his life and his family's life.
Yeah.
So he wants to find him. They think that this soldier was part of the 191st Army Tank Battalion in the 20th Armored Division, and that he would have been traveling from Dachau to Munich around the 1st of May in 1945. So if anyone has any information who this soldier might be, he just wants to find him to tell him thank you. So, are you ready for your update?
Yep.
A little bit of bittersweet. He did find him.
Yeah.
But that soldier was believed to be Lieutenant Steve Sattler, who had died December 7th, 1986, even before this even aired, at the age of 70. Lieutenant Steve Sattler was in the 191st Tank Battalion and had told his daughter about a story of how he'd helped a young boy coming out of the Dachau camp. That daughter ended up telling family members about it, and the niece, Brenda Clark, saw this and said, that's my uncle or grandfather, I don't know. And she finally got in touch with them in 2012.
Wow.
So it took a long time because the daughter heard about it, but didn't really do anything she'd heard about the Unsolved Mysteries or whatever, at least from my understanding. I could be wrong there, but didn't really do so. Kind of the niece took it upon herself to really try to get this all resolved and together. And I mean, kind of find out like this Steve Sattler, he was just a farmer in Michigan. He goes back, he marries, has like 6 kids, and just lives a quiet life, and ends up passing away when he's 70. So he never even knew but on November 11th, 2012, there's a big reunion and a thing at the Massachusetts State Assembly House November 11th, that's Veterans Day, and they have a big ceremony. He comes, the family members of Steve Sattler come, and Steve Ross, Schmulik, meets them, tells them thank you, and he gives that flag back
No way.
to the family.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And but Mr. Shmulik, Stephen Ross, he passed away February 24th, 2020, at the age of 88 years old.
He missed COVID by a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. But he actually helped start the museum for the Holocaust Jewish in Boston. He was a very beloved member of society out there. They even did a documentary that they show at the Jewish Museum there.
Really?
About him. Yep.
He's very well spoken and a great storyteller.
Yeah. There's a sorry, I'm going to pull it up just so.
So if we go to Boston.
Etched in Glass, The Legacy of Steve Ross. They did a documentary in 2017 on this guy.
So if we go to Boston, we'll have to go check that museum out.
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly, he was clearly a beam in his community.
Yeah.
And a good man.
You guys, this is something that has been important to me, but I will say that right here, you never know what an act of kindness will do to somebody. And I'm not saying that this soldier deserves all of the credit for all the good things. This man was an incredible human being. But what I'm saying is the butterfly effect of you never know where those ripples are going to go. So be kind.
I will say, so Steve Ross, he spoke many of times, and he went and spoke to soldiers and that, and just, he attributed a lot to this man specifically, but also said, like, you guys, all of you, changed our lives. Like, he gives a lot of credit, not just to him, but to all of them for their courage, their sacrifice, what they did. And anyway, so he was clearly a great man.
Okay. Well, I know one thing I was not expecting was to sob while watching Unsolved Mysteries.
It was, I mean, just the way he tells it.
He was an incredible
I'm sorry, you
storyteller.
can't watch that and hear the way he speaks and not get some type of emotional about it.
Exactly. All right. I am going to give a quick little plug. So we are a small independent podcast. It's just me and little Benjamin over here. And one of the biggest requests that we have for you guys is if that you enjoy our podcast, to please leave us a 5-star rating and review anywhere that you get your podcast. We also have a TikTok and an Instagram page that we would love to interact with you guys on it, and that is Unsolved Couple Pod. We have a Facebook discussion group, Unsolved Couple Podcast, on Facebook, where you can get over there and talk about each episode and engage in discussion. And one of the best things you can do, since this is free, is to support us in those ways. Okie dokie, artichoke. All right. Going from that, I've got a story for you about Rolf Singler. I know. Rolf Sigler. Had you ever heard of this story before?
No, I never have. And I'm usually into, this is a spy story.
Yeah.
I've told you, I like conspiracies. I like spy stuff.
Yeah, we've watched a few documentaries about some of the crazy conspiracy spy stories here in the great old United of the States.
Sigler. Sigler. Sigler.
So, 11 p.m., April 13th, 1976. 47-year-old Rolf Sigler. Good night. A U.S. Army intelligence officer was found dead in his motel room with the doors locked and bolted from the inside, near Fort Meade, Maryland. The Army quickly ruled his death as suicide. They claimed that he had wrapped electrical wire around his arms and electrocuted himself.
That is the most...
Yep. Well...
That is the strangest way to try to commit suicide.
And I'm sure it's in my notes later. He was on top of 2 chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was an Army electrician expert or something like that.
Yeah, but
also
I should have called my dad, and maybe I will later. The amount of electricity current inside an electrical socket.
I'm pretty certain this can't happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know because I'm not an electrician. But
I'm not
if someone
either.
out there is an electrician,
I
after you
know
hear
that
this
there's
story,
always a risk of electricity. My dad has climbed power poles and worked around extremely high voltage power stuff my entire life. My dad has been electrocuted before from a wind blowing something and the conduction taking place. And thankfully it was on his right side instead of his left side, but I don't know. It just seems like the power inside our homes is not as deadly as one might. I don't know. This just was a crazy way.
All
But
right,
okay.
sorry, I got distracted.
And here's the thing. That lays the groundwork for conspiracy.
Conspiracies.
Yeah.
Of course.
2 weeks later, he's put to rest. His daughter, however, standing over her father's open casket, notices that his nose was broken. She opens his mouth and notices that several of his teeth are missing and broken. He is covered in bruises and contusions on parts of his body. And this seems like it doesn't add up with suicide.
Really?
Yeah. From 1966 to his death, Rolf was a double agent working for the United States. In December 1966, he arrived in Mexico City after being recruited by Army Intelligence, one of the Western Hemisphere headquarters for the Soviet Union offices was in that area. He told them, he went in, it literally in the reenactment goes in and says, I'd like to speak to the leader of the KGB.
There's no way this happened this way. The way they reenact, there is not a chance in this world that some dude just walks in and says, hey.
Excuse, I'd like to speak to the leader of the KGB. Thank you.
Yeah.
And is able to arrange for that to happen?
Nope.
No. Do the Russians even acknowledge that the KGB exists? Isn't it like...
I don't know. I'm just saying there's no way he got in with the KGB by just walking into the embassy.
Well, according to Unsolved Mysteries, it's just that simple.
No.
Okay. However, he tells them that he will deliver stolen documents about the U.S. missile development. The Soviets take the bait. So here's my thing. If he did just wander in and say, I would like to speak to this person, here's this, and the KGB was stupid enough to be like, this tracks. This makes perfect sense.
Well, you actually know where he's from, Ralph?
Yeah. I cannot... I have it in my notes.
Czechoslovakia.
Yeah, let's add that to the list of how this ends up being a conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, he's from there, then obviously he
Yep.
becomes an American citizen, joins the military, but...
Yeah, so
no.
this is the gateway into him being a double agent. And his world of espionage starts off. Throughout the next decade, Rolf contacted his Soviet employers through clandestine methods, giving them misleading information that he received through his superior. The documents that Ralph gave the Soviets were so that the Soviets would try to copy and recreate missiles that didn't actually work.
I actually thought this was genius.
That was just hilarious. The best part is the only way we knew that they didn't work is because the Americas had tried to make the same missile work and it failed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they'd already invested millions of dollars into this, and they thought, well, if we wasted all this money, maybe we can get them to waste their money on it too.
Well, it was great because then you're having them take all this time, this money, resources, putting it into this technology that America already knows will never work.
Yeah.
And just wasting their time. Well, we're still trying to find stuff that does work. And then when we find the stuff that works,
this is the art of war.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this was the Cold War.
This is the Cold War. Yeah.
It was great. It was genius.
So the plan was successful, and the Soviets spent several years and millions of dollars developing failed missiles. Along with giving the Soviets misleading information, Ralph also exposed Soviet agents to the FBI. One of the most important was Rudolf Herman, a Soviet master spy who lived and worked in the United States.
What do you think it takes to be a master spy over just a spy?
Dude, I don't know. This world of spy is weird to me and wild and very complicated. And I think that you should trust nobody if you're in that world. You shouldn't trust your wife. You shouldn't trust your friend. You shouldn't trust your neighbor. No one. And I think that would send me into a state of paranoia that I could not function.
Wow, nobody, even the wife, huh?
Also, I'm a terrible liar. I can't even string up some shoes onto a wire without feeling guilty, so I cannot. I would be so stressed the whole time.
All the time.
Yeah. Just thinking about this.
The KGB's around the corner.
No, thank you. Okay, so the master spy, the FBI asked Ralph to keep this part of his mission, though, secret, and he agreed.
That he'd found the master spy.
Yeah, so we've got two different things going on. We've got the information being given for the missiles, and then his other operation was to also turn in double agents, master spies.
Yeah, because I think they say in Unsolved Mysteries, the FBI thought that Army intelligence was compromised.
Yeah.
So
and
because
that's the thing.
found...
We've got Army intelligence and FBI. We've got the KGB and the
Well, even one of his Army officers that's over him, even then admits slightly, if he knows, that the CIA was...
Oh, yeah.
So
and we also have the CIA
involved
involved in this.
This guy is a spy for the America,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the FBI using him, Army intelligence, and the CIA. But then they themselves
are not
talking
Nope.
to each other, but they're trying to use this one
and
asset.
who do you think is going to get any wrongdoing blamed on
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You're setting this guy up
Mm-hmm.
because everybody wants to use
And if
this
they're like,
asset.
Hey, can you do me a favor, but don't tell anybody that we asked you to do this favor, but we super promise that if you get in trouble doing this favor, we got your back.
Yeah, it's a recipe for a disaster.
Yeah, the government ain't gonna do jack shizzity bob if you get yourself in any sort of trouble. In 1976, Ralph is sent to San Francisco to give a standardized polygraph by Army intelligence. Here's where this is going to be a problem. He has worked for the FBI, Army intelligence, and CIA, and infiltrated super spy groups, none of which know about each other. So he has a full deck of who he's been talking to and who he's not been talking to. And I think he assumed in the back of his mind that it's possible that at least the people on the America side all kind of knew that they were using the same guy. Turns out that that's not the case. So the results indicate that he was deceptive in answering his questions because he had been told by the other agencies, don't tell anybody we asked you to do this. So Ben has actually taken a polygraph test before. How was that experience for you, babe?
It was the worst experience of my life.
Yeah.
Hands
was it
down.
chill and easy?
Nope. Mm-mm. It's awful.
It's awful.
I mean, when they say like they make you sweat, I literally had sweat rolling down my back.
I'm going to give you guys a little background on Sweet Benjamin. This man, especially up until that point, was about as blue-blooded, good, wholesome American boy that you could find. He had never even so much as lifted a candy bar at this point.
I'd never done a thing of drugs. I never had a sip of alcohol.
No.
And I'm 25 years old at the time.
Yeah.
But at this time, I'm trying to get the job I'm in now for the federal government. And I need this job. It was
Your wife is
you
6
were
months pregnant
6
with
months
twins.
pregnant with our twins. I needed this job. And
I guess I think both you and I didn't realize that the polygraph was going to be that big of a deal because you had never committed a crime.
no,
You had never done anything nefarious. I don't even think you had cheated on a test. Like,
no, I sorry. I'll tell this small caveat, and that it was the worst thing I've ever experienced. It was done by a former CIA guy, and I'm in this tiny room. You have to sit in a chair. You cannot move, and they put you right up, and you're just staring at a wall. And I was hooked up to the machine for, I think, 4 hours, just getting drilled with question after question after question. And the worst thing, I mean, I'd lied to my mom one time when I was 17 about going on a trip.
as a teenager, you
I
lied to
know.
your mother?
I know. I'd lied to my mom about going on a trip and that my girlfriend was there.
Oh, so you do still think about your high school girlfriend?
No. And my mom had asked me, was your girlfriend there? And I said no.
Obviously
and I totally
not.
just lied straight to my face.
Yeah.
And I remembered that instance because it really was.
It was the biggest lie you had ever told.
Well, not just that, but my mom made me look her in the eye, and she asked me a question. And I looked my mom straight in the eye and lied. And I remember that because it was a pretty terrible lie. And that came up in my polygraph.
Everyone is laughing because that is Ben's biggest terrifying, deceitful moment at 17.
Well, here's the thing.
In his entire life, that is his,
To this day, I am disgusted with myself that I looked someone in the eye and lied straight to their face.
But you're knowingly, an adult now. Yeah.
Knowingly lied straight to their face. And it disgusts me.
This is the same boy getting a polygraph test from someone from the CIA.
And I'm getting drilled, and I admitted that in my thing, and I'm getting yelled at by this guy. He's yelling like just awful things about me, telling me how I'm a horrible son to my mom. Like, how could I ever do that? Like, and he was asking me questions like, I thought you cared about your family. Do you not care about your parents? Like that. And I'm just getting drilled.
Yeah.
And he would like stop the machine and just yell at me. He's like, we're starting over. And then I'd have to start over again. And this went on for hours.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I
and
ended
he
up...
told you, and his could be him just blowing smoke up your butt, that you barely passed.
Yeah. I remember getting out of that thing and calling my mom in tears. I'm a 25-year-old dude, been married for 4 or 5 years at this time.
Yeah.
And just almost in tears because I walked out thinking, I am the worst human being that has walked the face of the earth.
Yeah.
That's how you felt. Like, so I hate polygraphs. And I realized after that, and especially as I got older, that it's not about the answers. It's all about, what, anyways, if you are a psychopath and don't believe, it's all about conscience.
Yeah, that's the thing that's unfortunate.
If you have a
is
conscience,
that narcissistic psychopaths are going to pass polygraph tests, and genuinely good people that can feel guilt or like, oh my gosh, what if I did something and I didn't realize it, but it's still, they will fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a conscience, you will fail a polygraph miserably.
Yeah. In the meantime, I
got off track.
Touring Seattle, having the grandest of times. So, anyways, the whole point is that he's having he cannot pass these tests. And a lot of it, from my understanding, is because he had been told by other agencies, like, don't tell anyone that you're doing this for us.
Yeah, but you've also, for 10 years, have literally been trained and told to live your life in deceit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're trying to be deceitful to almost everyone around you.
Yeah. So he's in San Francisco for days, taking polygraph tests over and over and over again. And finally, he fails his last test. Ralph was scheduled to undergo an intense and aggressive interrogation by this point. So they tell him, dude, expect the craziness to start.
Well, no, they have him do it in San Francisco.
Well, they said, we will be treating you as a traitor at this point.
Yeah, they even send him across the country. It's like, you're going
He's got to go back to Virginia to do it. That's why we are in San Francisco for the test. They ship him to, or is Maryland?
Maryland.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh, it's terrible. And 24 hours before the interrogation is to begin, Ralph calls his wife at her work. And according to her, he sounds distressed and tells her to hire a lawyer and that she is to sue the U.S. Army. He ended the call by saying, "I am dying. I've never lied." And the call abrupts. She goes home and contacts Army intelligence. Several hours later, Ralph would be found dead. The police were called, the local police were called into this. I thought NCIS would have been called in for something like this. Isn't that the whole point of NCIS?
No, NCIS is over Navy and Marines.
Okay.
But the Army has an Army Criminal Intelligence.
So Army and Criminal Intelligence should have been called into this.
Not Criminal Intelligence, but Criminal Investigation Unit. They have their own. So I'm a little surprised. But I'll be honest, I don't know when it started. So maybe this is the 70s. Maybe they hadn't established that section.
I don't know. So they begin to investigate Ralph's death almost immediately. There's no investigation. There's no sign of a struggle. He didn't really appear to have any injuries other than those he had received from falling out of 2 large chairs that were stacked on top of each other and bleeding from the nose. And the locks on the door had been double latched from the inside. Based on the evidence, the police believe that Ralph stacked one of the chairs on top of the other. I'm not going to go into detail about what did all of this stuff, puts his hand into some water, turns the light switch on, causing him to die from electric shock.
He wraps 2 wires around his biceps. How does that electrocute you?
Well, that's my thing is in a hotel room, there's a lot more options than this, but yeah, I don't know. However, Ralph's family and several others believe that he was murdered by Soviet agents. Journalists. There's a journalist who actually wrote a book. It's called Widows about this case.
I looked up the book.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, Widows.
They are convinced that Ralph was murdered. They learned that during the polygraph examination, Ralph was told that he would not be prosecuted if he just told the truth. It seemed unlikely that he would then take his own life just because of this investigation. Again, there seemed to be some belief that he thought that the FBI or the CIA or Army intelligence would get the opportunity to clear his name once they realized that he had been working for multiple agencies. They also brought in an electric expert who stated that the injuries to Ralph's arms could not have come from a simple 110-volt circuit that would be found in a hotel room. They believe that he was kidnapped by the KGB, tortured, and murdered. The motivation may have been a covert operation that the U.S. Army did not know about. And that's where it leaves us.
Update.
Unsolved.
We don't know.
Ben, what I find highly weird about this, there is not a Reddit page. There is no tip line. There is no news. There is nothing.
I read a little bit about it.
Except for the book.
I read a little bit about it.
Ben, we've been doing how many episodes now?
Yeah. No, I know. I read an article from the El Paso Times about it. But I was actually surprised with something like this. With a spy, there wasn't more out there.
Mm-hmm. To me, that is sus.
Here's my only caveat with this story. Okay?
Okay.
I've noticed there's been a little bit of a trend on Unsolved Mysteries with these conspiracies. Mm-hmm. Do you notice how they are all brought to Unsolved Mysteries?
By the writer of the books.
By authors of books.
Fair point. Okay.
So I'm not discounting this, but we did that. I mean, probably everyone got bored, but that way too long story about Rudolf Hess.
Yeah.
That whole conspiracy was brought by that doctor who wrote a book. Mm-hmm. And he got a 20-minute segment. He got a free plug on national television about his conspiracy that he wrote a book about.
Yeah.
These two people because they interview the authors, the guy and his wife.
Yeah.
And they get a lot of screen time
Yeah.
to tell about this conspiracy.
Yeah.
Who wrote a book. And, it doesn't, I'm not saying it doesn't discount that this is, here's the thing, do I think that he
this stuff
electrocuted
doesn't
himself?
add up.
Absolutely
This
not.
guy had no reason to take his own life he got on the plane and went to Virginia or Maryland, wherever he went to. This seemed like, I don't know.
Well, and I'm sorry, this is the thing I can't get over. No one kills himself that way.
Nope.
There are so many other ways to commit suicide.
Yep.
It just does not make any sense.
Well, you've got the KGB, you've got the CIA, you've got Army Intelligence and FBI. They all care about themselves way more than they care about you. Every single one of those entities. I even know of someone personally who worked in the FBI doing stuff with the federal mail system. And he was the lower man on a totem pole that did a bunch of drug investigation. Anyway, long story short, his life got ruined because some high up person in the FBI didn't want to hang. They got caught doing something they weren't supposed to, and they passed the buck on to their team.
Yeah, and I mean...
It took several years, and here's the thing, he was found innocent in the long time, but it ruined his family emotionally, physically, and financially. And so...
Well, and I mean, you gotta think, turns out an Army officer is killed on U.S. soil by a KGB. That's not good for them.
No.
So it's just easier to say it was...
Yeah.
And did you notice they interview one of his superiors, the military guy?
Yeah.
And when he talks about that, there's a conspiracy that day, the way he says it and the way he actually won't look at the camera when he says it, I'm not an expert.
It was weird.
But if someone, I've talked to people that have committed crimes and I'm asking them questions, right?
Are they good with eye contact?
And the way they like I said, I am not an expert. But if I'd asked those questions and he'd answered me the way that guy answered me, my suspicions would not be lowered.
Yeah.
They would be heightened. The way that guy says that, and that he wasn't killed, and that he, from the facts and from what I saw, he committed suicide.
Everyone very quickly was like, nothing to see here, move along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh, I would say you're a liar.
Yeah. All right. You've got our last story for us.
All right, this one will be quick.
Okay.
All right. We got this is not about the Night Stalker, but it kind of is about the Night Stalker. Do you know about the Night Stalker?
Oh, of course I know about the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez.
Okay. Would it surprise you to know that I've never heard of this?
No.
Never heard of it. This is the first time I've heard.
Netflix has an amazing documentary about this whole case.
Yeah, this is the first I've ever heard, and I didn't even know this happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
but by this point, that case is solved. So
yeah.
This is
1985, L.A. We got a serial killer, Night Stalker. We hear that the L.A. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, they got a 120-man task force. They're trying to find out.
This was a big deal. Yeah.
This guy, I guess he terrorized L.A. for 6 months, killed 13 people.
Yep.
Right. So they're here to tell us that there's someone that hasn't collected an award for helping catch the Night Stalker.
Yep.
They said up to 18 people had collected some partially up.
There was several different rewards.
Yeah. So
but the biggest reward still has not been claimed, and they even know who this person is in a way.
Yeah. So August 26, 1985, they had received a call. The task force does, and they deemed it to be legitimate. He says, hey, listen, I know who the Night Stalker is. He's a friend of mine, kind of. He's an acquaintance. So they say, hey, man, can you come in and we'll interview you? Let's find out what you know. He comes in. He tells them that his name is Alejandro Espinoza. And he says that I know this guy. His name is Richard. And I have driven him to a house where he takes stuff that he tells me that he's committed burglaries. He's stolen stuff. They're kind of friends on the street. I'm going to guess Richard is out on the street probably doing things he's not supposed to. I don't know. I'm making an assumption. Sorry, Richard. Sorry, Alejandro. If I'm making
After
an
I
assumption.
watched this episode, I sang that song. My ADHD brain played that nonstop in my head for 48 hours.
But Alejandro says that Richard tells him, hey, I've committed burglaries. He takes him to this house. Richard goes in and sells the stuff for cash.
Yeah.
Well, Alejandro says he started putting it together that every time he was going and selling stuff, kind of correlated with one of the nights that the Night Stalker had struck. So he's like, hey, I think this is your guy. So the police look it up. They have an arrest record for a Richard Ramirez. They pull his fingerprints, and they get a positive ID on his fingerprints from one of the crime scenes. Mm-hmm. They take the photo to Alejandro later. They find him then, I guess. Show him. He goes, yeah, that's my friend Richard, or my acquaintance Richard. And Richard is arrested and convicted.
Yep.
He wasn't convicted till 1989.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
It is a long time.
So, they tell us $6,388.81 has not been recovered by Alejandro, and he is entitled to it because he helped catch the Night Stalker.
He literally handed the Night Stalker to them on a silver platter.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to find him. They want to give him his money, and good for them. Like, hey, man, and that's pretty much the story. They literally tell this story in like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, update. You ready?
Yeah.
Never found.
Do you think something happened to that guy?
Yeah, I do. I mean, here's the thing. They say that they believed he was married and had a kid, but they don't know. He never gave them an address. So they don't know.
Yeah, because the reward would have not been available until after the conviction.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years later.
Yeah.
So obviously they probably weren't in contact with him for a long time.
Yeah.
It's very possible he up and moved and is in a completely different state. There's rumors that maybe he was an illegal or he went back. We don't know. So, but yeah, never found. That reward was never claimed.
Huh. All right. There you go. All right, guys. That is the recap of Season 2, Episode 9 of Unsolved Mysteries. The question for the episode. Ben.
All right.
Did you have a favorite teacher growing up, and what was their name?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Obviously. But I am horrific with names.
You don't remember your favorite teacher's name?
Sierra, I don't think people understand. When I tell you I have a terrible memory, I do. There are a lot of people I went to school with for years and years on end. To this day, I can't remember their names.
Okay, well, what grade? Was it junior high, elementary, high school?
I think it was my 6th grade teacher.
In 6th grade, did you go to multiple
Elementary
classes?
school.
Okay.
I was in elementary school still. We didn't start middle school until...
Give us just a few reasons why this person was your favorite teacher.
I don't know. She just was nice. She was kind. She was helpful. She always, too... so in our little elementary school, we had 3 classes that were kind of connected. So you had a 4th, 5th, and 6th grade class. But there was a teacher in each. It's hard to explain, but they were like in the corner of the building, and there was 3 classrooms. And she every year wrote a play for those 3 classes, and they got performed in the school.
Okay.
She was big into that.
Yeah.
And so she was a big part of the school.
Yeah.
And she just was kind. She was a great teacher.
Yeah.
She had, and I'm the youngest of 7. I think she had 5 or 6 of, I think 4 or 5 of my siblings. So by the time I got there, she knew
she's
all
like, it's just
about my
Turner.
family.
Yeah.
And was very kind in that.
Yeah.
And I was a pretty shy, quiet kid.
Mm-hmm. As surprising to nobody.
So, Yeah. And she's the one that started calling me by my last name, because I had a kid in my class who was also named Ben with I think I told this before, with the last name that started with a T. So that's where, like, from there on out through high school, everyone just called me by my last name. And
Yeah.
she's the one that started that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I always liked her. She was just always kind. What about you?
So I will say, I took you guys, and I think I even shared this, to my elementary school, Looking Glass Elementary.
Yeah.
Tiny.
It's a beautiful little town.
Beautiful town. That entire school is beloved to me. Every teacher I had there was remarkable. I think she taught 3rd or 4th grade at the time, was Miss Darling was her name, and everyone was terrified of her because she was very strict. I loved her. But my most endearing teacher that I had in that school was Mrs. Bates. She was my 1st grade teacher. And she just was everything that embodied what you want in an elementary school teacher. She was kind and creative and supporting and, I mean, all of the things that you would want. And it's funny because we moved away from Looking Glass my 5th grade year, and I started at a new school. And this is obviously before Facebook and, always to connect to people and stuff like that. And so I was in 4-H, and I showed up to 4-H camp my first year, which would have been maybe a year or two after I'd left Looking Glass. And lo and behold, Mrs. Bates was one of the people over 4-H camp. And she dressed up as the Queen Crawdad. Because at Camp Myrtlewood, you've been to Camp Myrtlewood, we've done gatherings there, there is a creek of some sort there. And it is filled with salamanders and crawdads. And the kids loved it. Like, we spend the whole week there every day at the water time catching crawdads. So Mrs. Bates dressed up like Queen Crawdad every night for dinner and, like, did all kinds of silly, goofy things. It's just stuff like that I'm like, yeah, you were meant to teach children, that you're willing to dress up like Queen Crawdad and just make these kids feel happy and loved and laugh and stuff like that. So, yeah. Then I mean, junior high, it's hard. I think by then, you have 6 periods a day. Yeah, 8 periods a day. And so stuff like that. The only other big memory I have of a teacher is in junior high, there was a teacher named Mr. Riggs. He taught 7th grade English. And this is going to be a very niche thing, but he looked exactly like the child catcher from the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
I don't remember. I don't know that.
I know.
I've seen
Chitty
Chitty
only
Bang
a
Bang.
handful of people are going to know what this guy looks like. And the thing about Mr. Riggs is he was one of the most out-of-touch reality human beings that I knew. I don't think he left his house. I think he was a hermit. I think he was married to a Vietnamese woman who I don't even know spoke English, so I don't know if they even talked at home. And I just don't think he ever left his house. And he overheard me telling somebody at the school in class about him looking like this about the child catcher. And I think he thought it was a compliment. So he went home and rented the movie and watched it with his wife.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a compliment. And then told my mom about it in parent-teacher conference.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Busted. Busted.
I know, but he did look and the thing is, my mom was having a hard time because he's telling her this in parent-teacher conference.
She's seeing it.
And she fully agrees and is like laughing because it's so true. I mean, he had like the black greasy hair, this huge nose. Like, he was the embodiment of the child catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. But she had to come home and be like, Sierra, you can't say that about. But he'd never seen the movie. He went and rented it. I think he was a little surprised that he didn't see the resemblance, to say the least. So that's my fun teacher story. But yeah, Mrs. Bates and all of the people, if you ever worked at Looking Glass Elementary, you have a heart of gold, and you were an amazing person. So.
I remember her name, Miss Clausen.
Mrs. Clausen, or Miss Clausen. All right, well, Miss Clausen, if you're listening, you did good with Ben. Yeah. All right, everybody, that is our episode. We will see you next week when Ben and I recap one of the original gateway drugs from true crime.
Unsolved Mysteries.
Bye.